Hello, I'm George. If you're not familiar, this is Phat Foodforest. We're a half acre in the city limits of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm going to make this video just to do a quick talk about what we're seeing, and I want to go over the process for anyone that's interested. I'm doing this so other people can see how easy it can be. It's a lot of work in the beginning, but then we end up with this. We're 11 years in now. This is not a template, but it is many of the pieces you can put together in your own yard. That's not what a design is. A permaculture design is looking to nature and mimicking that in our yards for whatever your bioregion and your area needs, whatever your little piece of this gorgeous planet needs. I'll go into too much on the sectors and the zones and all that, but first we're going to talk about here. What we're seeing here is a half acre in the city, and it's a diamond shape. This is the annual garden here, but it also has all this herb spiral and these bees buzzing around me with the herbs. We do everything in succession. So throughout the year, we do multiple plantings and we stack those functions. So diversity within as many layers as we can, from cucumbers to beans to tomatoes to sage to other herbs out in front, rosemary, down to strawberries and sorrel in the front and down next to the rocks. Those rocks are collecting that heat and holding that heat for them. So always thinking like that. Same with this pond. This pond's collecting and holding energy. We're growing pond plants for the other ponds. We're feeding the ducks with a surplus off of here. We're collecting water and it's going into the garden because there's leaks in the top of this hot tub. It's self-filling, so it's filled by these PVCs that go up to a garden spout. Slow down. A roof spout that's coming down, gaining pressure in a 4-inch pipe down a 2-inch pipe, but there's also holes in that feeding the garden bed in front of it. So we're catching and storing that energy, all that water. We're catching and storing all that sunlight energy through photosynthesis, feeding that soil. Half of that carbon is going to go back into that soil and feed those microbes around it, keeping it out of the air, climate change. We're also releasing all this oxygen. Oxygen is wonderful. We all know that. We breathe it every day. We're creating microclimates, like I said, with the water, with the stone, collecting heat, but even the shaded areas, we'll design those for plants that work in there. We're using as many perennials as we can. I'm standing in the annual garden, but there's a ton of perennials around me as well. In many layers, from ground covers, root crops, shrubs, herbaceous layer, shrubs, shorter fruit trees, these tall nut trees around us, the climbing layer, the vining layer. And we're going to see that pattern anywhere around this globe that's not a desert or an Arctic tundra. So we mimic that in our yards, mimicking a forest where we get our observation. And we see how it's done. It's been doing it for a billion years, and it's got it down. So we do that in our yards, and what we're doing is we're stopping succession. We go next door here and we see a lawn. We have to mow that every week. It used to be done by hand. Now we're using that energy that's going to go away shortly, that fossil fuel. We're not going to be able to use as much and as freely. So how do we replace those things? Well, we decided to not stop succession. We hold it back in certain ways. We hold it back in certain ways, but mostly we let it do its thing. We try to fill every little niche and void with plants that we want, because if we don't fill it with something that we want, something else will show up. I also talk about my own personal way as the weed method. I love weeds, so I eat those weeds. Some of them, like the ivies, I'll call it type 1 weed. I take that weed and I eradicate it in the first couple of years as fast as I can. Wherever I see it growing, I'm going to rip it out, trying to get other things in that area. A type 2 weed might be like some of these different asters around here. They're great pollinators, but once they set seed, it's 10,000 seeds. They're a weed and they go everywhere and flower everywhere. And it becomes too many and they've got a strong root to pull out. So those I'll walk around the yard. If I see it flowering, I'll snap it off in the head before it goes to seed, but I'll let those flowers stay there. They're calling in those beneficial, calling in those pollinators. I've got bees humming all around me in these flowers. I'm just about to touch that bee. I got that close. So that's what they're doing. They're having all these pollinators, all these interactions. We're mimicking a forest edge. When I say look to the forest, we're mimicking the edge of that forest. There's 7 layers, blending as densely and thoroughly as we can, catching those energies. So I'm going everywhere here. These are swales I'm standing in. This is a swale. There's another swale below it and on down through. We have around 25 swales on the property. Each will fill up, drain on a spot we have planted and designed that way, so there's no erosion, and the swale below it fills up and on down through the property. There are catch ponds here and there within it. That way we're taking that water, slowing it, spreading it, and sinking it, so we don't have erosion. We're here in Asheville. This went through Helene. I thought it was going to trash this. I've done all this man-made change. We had a wonderful design, though. We took our time, and we're very lucky with all the changes we did. We made small and slow solutions, small and slow changes, watching it as it went and guiding it. So here in year 11, we had almost zero damage from Helene. There were rivers running down both sides of our house here and into the backyard. We'll go down to the back pond here eventually, and I'll show you where. The stones go into that, and it had clear water. You could drink that water there. You couldn't drink that. It looked like you could drink that water there. It looked tan in color, and that was it. There was almost zero erosion. So we did that with many ways. These swales, redundancy in their drains, having wood chips in there to help hold that water. When it went over, having places, like I said, there's either sticks, rocks, or plantings to stop that erosion so we didn't get built up in the water. Having a tremendously diverse soil at this point, not just a bacterial dominant like a lawn would be over there, which would only want a certain kind of plant. Instead, we have a bacterial and fungal dominant soil here, welcoming a diversity of plants, so a lot of those perennials in there, lots of those roots holding it in place. I'm taking us all over here. I think we'll take a walk here, and I'll show the property, but this hasn't gotten too long. We'll start out front with the composting, the swales, but we'll look through here. I haven't even finished this yet, talking about this is the annual garden. Long-term annuals below us. Down there, we're going to see storage crops, garlic, onions, potatoes, dry beans. But we're also mixing in things like rhubarb and gooseberries, jossberries, currants, raspberries, bush cherries, figs, a pear tree, apples on the perimeter, asparagus, a diversity of perennials in there as well. So the more perennials we fill our diet with, the less annuals we need. Because what do the annuals need? They need a tremendous amount of labor or effort, whether that comes through us, so we got to hire gas-powered machines we use, fossil fuels. We're trying to reduce that amount of work. So once these perennials are in, they're getting bigger and bigger, producing more and more every year, and we've only planted it that one time and have to take care of it. Outside here is the food forest. I don't know how much you can see with the camera, but there's a gap in the trees here. There's a gap in the trees over here. We're at, I think, 11 o'clock now, and you can see my garden hasn't even gotten sun here, the annual garden, so we had to observe the property. That's our first and main largest principle, observe and interact. We start with our ethics. Our ethics are earth care, people care, and fair share. It's a whole video in itself, but we have to use that in our design process to make sure we're designing appropriately, not just through that human mindscape. A selfish mindscape, the selfish mind pattern. So, zone 3, observing, putting our fruit trees, our nut trees, all our perennials in. We want to put them where that sun hit most. So the sun hits over here in the morning, crosses the sky, goes through that gap, and sets over here. There's shade on either side, and so in the middle is where all of our fruits, nuts, and berries, our guilds are planted for the majority. Again, we do that with layers and guilds. They're symbiotic plants working together to meet the needs of the whole, plants, animals, and fungi working together like a forest does, but planted in succession. So flowering and fruiting times throughout the year, the way we prune them back in the wintertime, staggered in different years, spatial elements, thinking for that long term. This is where I always joke and tell classes. When I took my PDC, Patricia, bless her heart, one of my instructors said, has anybody planted fruit trees? And I was so proud. I had a few in already. Then she said, has anybody planted them too close together? So design, design, design. Understanding the size and shapes of all the elements you're working with, what their final structure is going to look like, how they work in your design, what their strengths are, what they're going to do for your property, what their weaknesses are. If they need to be held back, hold them back. If we need to propagate more of them, how? I'm rambling. I'm going to come up. We'll pause here, and we'll have a look around. All right, I'll come up and grab the camera. We're in zone 1. We're on the back porch, right next to the house. So zone 1 is going to be what's close to the house. So we walk through these areas twice a day. It can be the driveway, in and out of your car every day. For us, it's walking down here in the annual garden, where we'll pick and harvest things that we're going to eat that day. So tomatoes, some cucumbers, lettuce, stuff for the salads, things we're going to saute. But right next to it, we have our compost. So the compost is on the way. There are multiple layers of compost in here. There's a back door to the greenhouse there, so we can easily take the compost materials when we need out of the greenhouse into the compost. Drop off the food scraps there when we need to. There's that water collection I spoke of. Going down and feeding the garden, filling the pond, feeding around it. These swales in front. So that's zone 1. We harvest what we want here. I'm in here twice a day. Zone 2, more of the long-term annuals. Winter squash. We'll see climbing through the trees everywhere, trellising anywhere we can. Storage beans, things like that is all down here. We see there's raspberries mixed in. There's blueberries earlier in the year. This is one of the weeds that I want. I didn't go through the last weed category, which is that type 1 weed, like lamb's quarter. I let it go to seed. Lamb's quarter and sorrel and chickweed. We'll see some chickweed down here. And amaranth, things like that. I let them fill in any of those voids. Bare soil is our worst enemy. We don't want bare soil anywhere, so we do our best to avoid it. Mixed in, we have a cornelian cherry, a fig. There's probably some figs on here if we look right now. I might have I had a couple classes this week. Gooseberries, currants, 3 currants up there. There's some jujubes on here right now. These are jujube. But if we look behind the jujube, I've got a tomato climbing up through there as well. Apple tree has a great big squash and pumpkins hanging from it. Same down here. This is another cornelian cherry with a pear out in front of it. A complete guilder on this. As we walk down through here, I left bare soil from last harvest. I wasn't busy enough, but wait, what happened? It got covered up by chickweed, another one of the weeds that we love to eat. It was covering that bare soil for me because I leave all those seeds here. There's a few potatoes and rhubarb and stuff like that, next to this apple tree and the grapes. We'll go down to the pond from here. I don't know if I can get through the gate. Squash has trapped me in. And we're doing succession here. So we started earlier in the year with potatoes and asparagus. We do some peas down here, but it's just too dark. Through the year here, we did some cabbage through the year. Now we're doing mustard. Let mustard go to seed later on. Autumn olive, eating the pawpaw. I had the sister pawpaw to this. They grow in pairs usually. And there's the other one right next to this. And this one's ready. We're going to take it with us. It was so yummy. So yeah, we walk around harvesting. Even on the perennials, mixed in with all the annuals. Again, the violets, these are weeds. They take over the area when I'm not using it. The bear, we had a stellar pear year this year, but he ripped off a few branches. You see the scars going up the tree. Squash or pumpkin throat, climbing all over the place. So having these late season annuals for storage crops. Even up through the pawpaw. When I'm going, I can't see anything out of this camera because it's just so thick here. We're in a dense forest. Everything planted like the forest edge, letting that light in anywhere we can. Down here, we're just in almost shade most all the day. We get quite a few blueberries along here, and then king cherry does good because that's for a colder climate. So we're getting a little sun. So it's not just zones. It's not just growing area. What growing zone am I in? But where in my property is it? Down here, I hardly get any sun. So I've taken that tree that is on our edge of zone, growing zone. Here we see the goldfish in there, baby fish, the recycling pond. The fish have reproduced. I didn't think they'd do that in captivity. There's a ton of minnow fish in there. They're brown. I don't know if you can see them. Zoom in and see. There's just a ton of fish in there. Fall causes aeration. Goes back in there, taking the clean water off, letting the solids settle. I take those solids as nutrient and pump it onto the garden beds twice a year. This is where I was saying, after all the water from Helene came, we had rivers down here. All the swales were full, and it was a river into here. The redundancy and our drains on our pond made sure our tiny house didn't flood. and everything was absolutely fine. We were just amazed. Just amazed how well everything did. We were so fortunate. Oh, it finally fell and broke. I should have held it up. That means the rest of that's going to die. That pumpkin's not going to make it. I saw it hanging off these tendrils, and they were so amazingly strong they held that pumpkin up, but I messed up and didn't get it. This is my main guild. I talk about this a lot. This tree's got 4 grafts on it, so it's 5 types of apples. The way we've done lilies and irises in close. They're the first to flower, beating the leaves on the tree and beating the grass that would show up below. Coming out, we have stuff like foxglove, stuff like that. It's the middle of the year. Out front, we have irises and I'm not irises, black-eyed Susans and succulents, just humming with life this time of year. So it's made its way flowering out. So there's always something flowering. All the different types of apples on there. Early in the year, we lost this whole bottom branch. It's one type of apple because it flowered first. Facing south, it flowered a little early, and we got an early freeze. So most of those apples having that diversity. So if we lose it to disease or freeze, we've got later flowering or different types. And even taste, that many apples of one type is just too many. What are those crows talking about? Must be a hawk. Again, there's horseradish in here, all the different flowers, the nitrogen fixers, like the gummy berry, the silverberry back there, a non-invasive autumn olive, bush cherries in the back, another fig, gooseberries, currants, jostleberries down low, an elderberry over there. This video is getting long. We'll just walk up into the chicken area now. I don't know if I'll take you out front or not. Out front's the newest. It's only about 4 or 5 years old, but it's still, we call the free gardens. All cuttings from here and from other places. We bartered or traded or gifted. There's figs, Asian pears, mulberries, Nanking cherries, blueberries, honeyberries. Just a diversity of species in here. Another branch I lost to the bear. And winter squash throughout, crawling over the place. When we talk about microclimates, I'm out here in the heat, but I take 3 steps this way, and I'm in the shade. No more left, but normally we're near harvesting mulberries. It's a mulberry tree. Planting trees to their final spacing. This honeyberry was obviously too close. It's not getting enough sun now. Coming up through here, we have more ponds in our swale system. This is a T-valve in it. I can drain it down below. Catching all that duck waste, all that manure, passing it through the system. This is where I talk about the swale system out front. To get us to here, just going around this corner from where I would normally have a rain barrel catching 55 gallons. Instead, I have a swale that's sloped. Goes down so I don't get water in my basement. Takes it away from the front of the house. There's 2 small catch ponds. You can't even tell they're ponds. One's 300, spitting. One's 300, and one's 600 gallons. Then there's 2 swales out and back, each 500, and another little pond here. So over 2,000 gallons being caught before we even get into this pond, which is solid. That's all in forest ponds. These swales and ponds drain down into the, once they fill up and overflow into the next one, they hold that water until it saturates down on the ground. Out here, more of the same. The understory. This silverberry we see is just starting to flower now. We'll have berries during the winter. So we're getting that diversity of species going. Something during all seasons. This is our propagation greenhouse. So we can do hardwood, softwood, and semi-hardwood cuttings. And I'm just going to finish off by showing the compost over here. I won't talk too much about this. It's a repeat of the backyard. Right out here along the road. Here's the turkeys. What's up, turkeys? Pterodactyls. And the ducks. Compost systems. I've done a lot of videos on these, but these are thermophilic composts. Make one a week and they get turned. So these have been turned multiple times. I get them into Johnson Sue's as soon as I can. And then they set for a year. From there it goes into our basement and goes to a worm composting system. This video's been long enough. I'm George, Phat Ninja Food Forest. Change is better than a holiday and long overdue. Peace.